Italy, the country of ancient Roman ruins and 50 UNESCO heritage sites. Italy is a European country that sits right at the center of the Mediterranean. Its geographic position has been extremely important and valuable throughout the ages. But Italy is also an extremely interesting country whose history, anthropology, and mindset must be understood in order to understand the current geopolitical struggles that it is going through. Part 1. In order to understand the modern geopolitics of Italy, we have to understand the process that made Italy a nation. Italian unification is a long and complicated story that really deserves its own video. But for the sake of this video not being too long, let's just put it like this. In a process that started in 1859, the northern regions of what is today modern Italy, like the Kingdom of Piemonte, were inspired by the French Revolution and ultimately decided to go to war with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire in order to earn their independence, and then they had to march south and defeat the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. After Giuseppe Garibaldi defeated and conquered the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, the process of Italian unification was almost complete. All that was left were the Italian lands that were still in control of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, lands that they were able to annex after the defeat of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire in World War I. These military campaigns were successful, and eventually most Italian lands were unified in one state, although some lands that were part of Italian irredentism never became part of Italy. The best example of this would be Malta, which was part of the British Empire, and Corsica, which was and still is part of France today. And they also lost Istria and Dalmatia after the humiliating and disastrous experience of World War II. It is also important to remember that the northern Italian states that unified the country ended up industrializing the northern regions while leaving the agricultural south behind, and causing a population decline due to the millions of Italians that left the country to migrate to the United States of America, Brazil, and Argentina. This historical process of unification and industrialization is the reason why during the 2008 economic crisis, Italians referred to the south as Greece and to the north as Bavaria, the most industrialized part of Germany. This is also the reason why Italy as a nation does not have a good relation with the Mediterranean, because the country was unified under the rule and cultural influence of landlocked regions, who did not have a good geopolitical relationship with the Mediterranean in the first place. Since these states became the cultural center of the new nation, Italy became a peninsula that didn't see itself like one. In fact, the Italian people either look at the sea with great hatred or with great fear. On one side, there is the fear of immigrants and refugees coming from Africa crossing the Mediterranean to arrive in southern Italy. On the other, there is a general feeling that the Mediterranean is a prison that keeps Italy from becoming wealthy, powerful, and successful like the other countries of Northern Europe. Italy is not a telesocratic nation like Britain or the USA or Japan. That is to say, a nation that has a deep economic, political, military, and cultural connection with the sea. There are regions that have a rich maritime history and tradition like Venice, Sicily, and Genoa, but these regions didn't have an important voice in the cultural makeup of Italy, and their values and stories dominating the Mediterranean or controlling the Adriatic Sea weren't passed down and remembered in modern Italian society. This mentality has led Italy to play a rather neutral role in the conflicts and competition of the Mediterranean and Northern Africa, despite being in the most important geographic position. And when the country did try to play an active role in the Mediterranean, it ended up making huge mistakes that damaged its influence over other regions. Mistakes that I will try to explain. Part 2. Italian interests in North Africa and the Western Balkans. Libya is a good example on how to explain Italian geopolitics. Italy is a peninsula, and as such it must find a way to exert some level of power and control over the three seas surrounding it, the Adriatic, the Ionian, and the Tyrrhenian. The most important of which is of course the Adriatic, and the second to that the Ionian. To Italy, Libya is a very important nation, not just because it is rich with oil, which is necessary for the Italian industry, but because of its geographic position. By controlling Libya, Italy can extend its influence over other regions in northern Africa and protect its southern regions like Sicily. In other words, when some unexpected crisis, like let's say the Arab Springs happens, Italy can prepare for the incoming chaos in Libya, away from its shores. For example, it can control the main migration routes that lead African refugees towards Europe. But most importantly, Libya allows Italy to have a foothold on the other side of the sea and gain a sense of security, defend its coast from potential attacks and illegal crossings, and spread its influence over the other regions of Africa. This is why one of the first military campaigns of the Kingdom of Italy was the Italo-Turkish War of 1912, which Italy won thanks to its naval superiority and was able to solidify its victory over the territory that is modern Libya. However, it is important to understand that the idea of Libya as a nation-state did not exist. The country itself was invented by the Italians after the defeat in World War II, and its borders designed and created in accordance with the other colonial powers of Europe, mainly France and Britain. I mean, just look at them, they are so unnatural. Despite this, however, Libya remained under Italian influence, and the country was able to exploit the rich oil fields of its ex-colony and control and protect its southern shores. However, since the start of the Libyan civil war, which didn't exactly happen because of the Arab Springs, but because of the intervention of foreign powers like NATO, Italy has lost its influence over the government of Tripoli to other powerful nations like Turkey, Russia, and France, the Yugoslav Wars, and the Western Balkans. The geographic extension of the Adriatic Sea, the Western Balkans are extremely important to Italy. They represent an opportunity for Rome to establish full control over its most important sea, while also being a possibility for other nations to gain access to it. In fact, Italy has a historical presence in the region. For example, the modern region known as Istria and Dalmatia were given to Italy by the Austro-Hungarian Empire after World War I, until it eventually lost them after World War II to Yugoslavia. Today, the Western Balkans are often seen as an unstable region that could collapse into war due to the political divisions of Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo. Two countries that deserve their own videos, but they will have to wait. To put it simply, the Western Balkans are both an opportunity and an issue for the Italian peninsula. This was seen clearly during the Yugoslav Wars. The Yugoslav War was a series of conflicts that took place in the Western Balkans due to the fall of Yugoslavia from 1991 to 1999. During the final years of this nation, and before the war, Italy made the foolish mistake of supporting the government of Belgrade and its control over the other regions. This ended up being a huge mistake. The country was doomed to fall, and Italy obviously didn't have the strength to save Yugoslavia. With the exception of Russia, the government of Belgrade had no allies left in Europe. The Germans, Austrians, Americans, and even the Vatican, and even some northern regions of Italy supported Croatian and Slovenian independence against the decisions of the government of Rome. Now, on paper, Italy's decision to support the government of Belgrade made sense. Avoiding a conflict that is going to take place close to your country is logical. That would lead to a refugee crisis, tensions in the Adriatic Sea, and since Europe was already going through a period of transformation due to the fall of the Soviet Union, it might have created new problems in the continent. In the end though, Italy's decision to invest billions of Italian liras in the government of Belgrade would lead the country to a neat humiliation in 1999, when NATO started bombing Serbia and destroying some fabrics of the Italian automobile manufacturer Fiat. Italy did not achieve its goal of saving Yugoslavia, and it wasn't even able to establish its own political and economic influence over the other countries that gained independence, like Croatia or Slovenia. At the very entrance of the Adriatic Sea, right on the Strait of Otranto, lies Albania, a small country with a population of around 3 million people, which was and still is very important to Rome. I know this may sound a little absurd to you. Albania is a very small nation with a small population and no natural resources to speak of. But I want you to understand that geopolitics does not revolve around natural resources and profits, but also around strategic protection. As I already explained, Libya is important to Italy because it gives Italy a foothold in Africa, and if or when a crisis happens in Africa, the government of Rome can deal with it by using its presence in Libya. This is the reason why Italy conducted 3 military operations in Albania during the 90s to stabilize the country, the best example of which was in 1997, when Albania was plunged into a deep crisis due to the pyramid schemes. Italy sent its military troops there to help restore order in the country and also increase its political influence in it. It's also the reason why Albania became an Italian colony during the 20th century, a country that is located right at the entrance of the Adriatic Sea, that looks up to Italy as a superior nation and is very easy to control due to its small population and size. And yet, Italian influence in Albania has also been in decline since the early 2000s. You see, during the 90s, Italy eliminated all negative colonial feelings it had left in the country and found itself as the most influential political voice in Albania after the United States of America, which is expected considering that the US is a superpower. But after that, Italy started losing ground to other influential countries like Germany and Turkey, who, unlike Italy, did not focus only on economic relations, but on geopolitical ones. With great happiness from the Italian population, who looks at Albania as a burden, and it's true, Albania is a burden sometimes, but on a strategic level, Albania is still too important to just give up or just be ignored. And because it is so close to Italy, it should always try to influence the country to its advantage so that other nations do not take over or threaten the entrance of the Adriatic Sea. Today, Italy is still Albania's biggest trading partner, but in terms of overall influence, Germany and Turkey are much more powerful. We can see this because Italian used to be the most taught foreign language in Albania, but nowadays the average Albanian would rather take German or Turkish courses. That and the fact that Turkey has gained a lot of political influence in the country to date. This goes to show that economic influence just isn't the same as political influence, and is also the reason why Italy hasn't been able to create a constant political agenda in the Western Balkans. Part 3. Italy's place in the European Union. With the exit of the United Kingdom from the European Union, Italy has become the third largest country in the EU out of sheer GDP and population. However, the problem is that the Italian brand and industry has been in decline for some time now, and the country is not in the same light as Germany and France. This leaves Italy with few options, one of which is to try and form an alliance with one of these two countries against the other. This is happening in the form of what is called the Quirinal Treaty, which is basically a treaty between Italy and France so that they can ensure that Germany will not return to the same level of austerity that it did during the 2008 financial crisis, when the Berlin government was driving some very hard austerity measures over the southern countries of Europe, especially in Greece, but also Portugal, Spain, and Italy itself. Back then, this caused a lot of social unrest in the country, and simply telling people that the European Commission would take care of it was not enough. Now, there is a chance that things might get even worse due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which was not handled properly by the government. Looking towards the future, Italy will need to find a way to follow its own interests inside of the European Union, while learn to compete with other countries like Germany, Turkey, and Russia for influence in the Western Balkans. Italy also has another problem to resolve, a demographic one. Today, Italy is suffering from a severe demographic crisis. Due to low birth rates and the fact that a lot of young people are immigrating to other countries in search of better jobs, the land of Rome is suffering from a deep demographic crisis. As of the making of this video, the average median age in Italy is around 47.3 years old, making it the second country with the oldest population in the entire world. Things even worse, the country's population has been in decline since 2015. Of course, the situation is not unique to Italy. Many other countries in Europe are dealing with this issue. However, unlike Italy, countries like France, Germany, and even Spain are actually trying to fight this problem by implementing several immigration and workers programs, inviting workers from the Balkans. And while these programs might be controversial because they open debates about immigration control and national identity and job loss and whatnot, they are ultimately necessary, so the population of the country does not become too old. Conclusion. With this video, I wanted to explain the basic geographic and political challenges of the Italian Republic. Today, Italy still struggles with the idea of itself playing a leading or larger role in the Mediterranean and within the European Union. It still needs to find a way to exert some level of control over the seas that surround it, while making sure that it can keep up with Germany and France inside of the EU, so that it does not fall under the influence of these two countries. The following years will be very difficult for Italy. However, I believe that the country can find a way to fix its geopolitical problems. It's never too late to take action.